Testing.
The time is 7:01. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin. Counselor Heinck. Counselor Lammerman.
Here.
Counselor Merriday.
Here.
Counselor Settlemyre.
Here.
Counselor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Solsby.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. All right, tonight we have a presentation from the State Historic Preservation Office. Ms. Clemmer?
Good evening, Mayor. So, the State Historic Preservation Office and Cottage Grove Planning staff have been working on a disaster preparedness reconnaissance level survey of 3 different areas of town that have either historic or potentially historic structures. This survey provided findings for recommendations for individual and historic district nomination and disaster resilience recommendations for historic resources paired with general community preparedness. A longer version of this presentation was given at the July 21st Historic Preservation Commission meeting. At this time, Evan West, the Survey and Inventory Coordinator for SHPO, will present an overview of the survey and findings.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I warned Evan that this might happen, so we're going to take a minute or two and see if we can't trick Zoom into allowing him to be heard in the council chambers.
I can see you and hear you quite well, so let me know when you can hear me. I'll keep talking so that...
All right.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you. Let's hope
Oh,
it
excellent.
holds true for your entire presentation. Thank you for your patience.
If you lose me and you need to reset, just interrupt. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. It's my pleasure to be with you virtually tonight. As mentioned, I am Evan West. I'm the Survey and Inventory Coordinator with the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office. You might also have heard of this office referred to as Oregon Heritage, or abbreviation of State Historic Preservation Office, Oregon SHPO. That was an excellent summary I think I provided. I realize I hardly need to say anything more. That summary covers quite a bit of information, so thank you for that. But I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll attempt to share with you on screen here. Yes. All right, now let me know. Hopefully you can all see the PowerPoint presentation.
Looks good on our end, Evan. Thank you.
Excellent. So once again, yes, as mentioned, this is regarding a disaster preparedness RLS, which is a new concept for our office. I'm relatively new to the office. I'm approaching a year with Oregon SHPO now. Prior to joining, my career was as a historic preservation specialist with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And when I joined the state of Oregon, this was proposed as a new venture, providing what we call or working with the title of Disaster Preparedness RLS. We'll cover that more, what that means exactly. Here's my contact info. It's public information and it's on our website. You may have a stack of my business cards, but please feel free to share. Staff have been provided a copy of this PowerPoint and you are free to distribute it. That webpage at the bottom there is the main page of Oregon Heritage or the Oregon SHPO. So I've used the term RLS, that stands for Reconnaissance Level Survey. Just briefly, what is an RLS? It's a foundational first look or evaluation at potentially historic or known historic resources. Importantly, this is an external and visual evaluation only. We aren't going into anyone's property, onto anyone's property, anything more than looking at built resources from the public right-of-way. But we find this useful for community planning, including next steps in historic preservation. It may or may not be followed up with other historic survey actions. And information collected is added to our Oregon Historic Sites database. The database is publicly accessible and searchable. And importantly, it has similar or less information as what you would find through your county assessor records. There's usually no owner contact information provided on our Historic Sites database. So if you are worried at all about privacy, please don't be. A little bit of background, in 2020, this document on the left of the screen, the Disaster Resilience Plan for Heritage Resources in Cottage Grove, was prepared and released by the University of Oregon. Oregon Heritage partnered with the wonderful planning staff at Cottage Grove to create the next phase of this endeavor, being our disaster preparedness survey. And it has what we call a dual functionality. The RLS for historic places helps us add to our historic sites database and get to know what's in Oregon. And our final reporting will work to build on the recommendations made in the disaster resilience plan. Now, you all will be receiving a written report with findings, final reporting, etc. That's forthcoming. It was supposed to be released some time ago. I apologize and appreciate your patience. Our office has not been immune to some of the challenges facing agencies everywhere. We lost 3 limited duration staff members this spring to budget reductions, and 2 of those staff were directly supporting this project. So I'm doing more with less, and I appreciate your patience. So while we were surveying in Cottage Grove, we heard a lot of folks who really wanted to share with us the stories of snow and ice storms of the recent past in Cottage Grove. These are photos of Cottage Grove locations you might recognize being impacted by snow or ice in the recent past. It's important to remember that disasters, natural and otherwise, can occur anywhere. Across the United States, the most common cause of disaster damage is actually flooding. Snow, ice, and other storms can often lead to flooding. And so that will be addressed heavily in the final reporting and a little bit throughout our presentation here. I have an opportunity for questions, but unless there's anything pressing, I will proceed so that we can have a greater conversation at the end of this slideshow.
Any questions? Please continue.
Thank you. So my colleague, Josh Henderson, and I spent 2 days in Cottage Grove in February. Always a pleasure to visit your wonderful community. And on the ground, we took a look at 172 individual properties. We sometimes refer to properties as resources, meaning potentially historic resources. And as mentioned, it was in 3 areas of your community. Of those 172, we identified 30 as preliminarily potentially eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And this is a very early determination and a very basic determination that can be overturned or affirmed at any step of the process later. Interestingly enough, we found what we consider to be a substantial uniformity of building type and plan and construction material in the areas that we surveyed. And as I mentioned, our final reporting will combine all of this in a way that's a lot more digestible. This is an amalgam of several presentations that I've given on this topic so far. So I appreciate your patience with this brand new topic being introduced to you quickly tonight. We looked at 3 different areas of Cottage Grove. The first one is what we call the Cottage Grove Speedway area. It's larger than the Speedway itself, but it includes the area where the Cottage Grove Speedway is located. As you can see on the map, the boundary area makes a irregular shape. And it sits over a special flood hazard map. And you can see that the majority of the survey boundary is within zone AE in a flood zone determination, which means that's what they frequently call the 100-year floodplain, or it means that FEMA has determined that you have a statistical 1% chance annually of flooding in that area. So we like to talk about both strengths and opportunities for improvement. That's obviously the Cottage Grove Speedway pictured. This survey area had the largest concentration of potentially eligible historic resources, 15 out of 50 total individual resources we looked at. The earliest date of construction we identified was 1920, where what we feel confident was 1920, we use a mix of assessor records and visual evaluation. And that's at 1041 Lord Avenue. Age of construction matters because we start with buildings that are 50 years old or older as a baseline for determining what's potentially historic or potentially historically eligible. Now, the Cottage Grove Speedway is a unique historic resource, in part because it is historic by age and likely historic under other criteria. It's in a unique location in that in the next slide, or in a coming slide, you'll see that it noted that a lot of this first survey area is in an area of wildland urban interface, WUI. Wildland urban interface is an area of high risk for urban wildfire spread. And the Cottage Grove Speedway is primarily wood in its construction material. Lots of grandstand features that are wood construction with limited synthetic material, which makes it a at-risk resource for fire hazard purposes. But it's also a unique asset. In disaster preparedness, we look for locations and communities that have pre-disturbed surface areas so that staging of people and equipment can be conducted in areas that are designed for heavy traffic. And also in the event of snowstorms, ice storms, flooding, etc., if there has to be vegetative debris removal undertaken, debris removal has to be done, has to be stored at a location that has been pre-disturbed. No new ground disturbance is usually allowed for debris removal purposes if you're seeking federal reimbursement for your costs. So there's 1041 Lord Avenue, what we think has the earliest date of construction in the survey area. And not too far away, 1125 Lord Avenue, date of construction, 1961. And you can see similarities in the plan and style of these two buildings. They're both relatively small. Probably cottage is the closest describable term. And in our database, we note the building siding material. As you can see in both of these cases, it's either horizontal or vertical board. And we found that a lot in the buildings we looked at in Cottage Grove. So in survey area 1, we also identified some hazards that we will be sharing recommendations for in our reporting. As you can see from the photo there, as I mentioned previously, it's a substantial area of wildland urban interface, which is a fire hazard. The majority of our survey area is located in the Special Flood Hazard Zone AE. Neither of those are uncommon per se, just items to be aware of. And in this survey area, it's bisected by railroad right-of-way, which is what's demonstrated by the photo here. That's also fairly common. And this photo, first of all, actually demonstrates a strength. Underpass, railroad overpass and underpassage for vehicles, is essential in areas that are bisected by railroad track. But as you can actually see in this photo, the height marker says that there's 8 feet of clearance. And it's a FEMA recommendation that railroad underpass and other underpasses, other bridges, anything that vehicles might pass beneath should have a height of 16 feet for fire truck clearance. Our second area that we looked at was what we call the Cottage Grove State Airport area. Once again, boundary laid over a flood map. And in this flood map, you'll see AE floodway to the right of the screen. That means that's a regulatory floodway where there has been identified a commonly flooding or rising waterway with restrictions on what can be built in and around it. And the design of that is that the floodway can rise up to a foot at any time without causing residual flooding in areas around it. Strengths of this area: earliest identified construction date, 1935. The Cottage Grove State Airport, similar to the Speedway, is an excellent asset for disaster preparedness, being once again previously disturbed ground area, storage and access. There's both potential individual and historic district eligibility. That's true also of our first survey area, meaning there are individual properties and resources and potentially some groups together to create potential historic districts, like Cottage Grove Downtown is an example of a historic district. And 78957, I believe, is our earliest in this area with a date of 1935, a similar style with a date of 1940. The similarly styled siding is a different material at 78948 Thornton Lane, but similar plan and building type, which indicates uniformity in age of construction and movements of construction. Specific hazards identified in this area, that's our lovely Peace Health Cottage Grove, which means we have critical infrastructure in a special flood hazard area adjacent to a regulatory floodway. We have the lowest number of potentially eligible resources in all of the survey areas we looked at here. And it's also the area where there's new construction occurring most frequently. It's at risk for infill and encroachment from new construction, and that can happen anywhere. And again, it's not expected, just a item to be aware of. And Survey Area 3 was added a little bit late in the process, so I apologize. You'll see a different type of map here. First of all, it's just a boundary area map showing mostly Taylor Avenue and the adjacent Cambria and Parks Place, I believe. And here is an overview with a flood map. It shows it's outside of any mapped special flood hazard areas. One of the prime examples of a potentially eligible resource in that survey area. Strengths, it's in close proximity to gathering sites. That would be Harrison Elementary and Lincoln Middle School. Some very early construction. I believe our building here is 1914 at 1505 Taylor Avenue. And again, potential both individual and historic districts. 1800 Taylor Avenue is another type. Mid-century modern is really in vogue in historic preservation right now. 1800 Taylor isn't, okay, never mind. It has a 1957 date of construction, so it could be potentially eligible already. Whereas 1446 Parks is back to our previous expected sort of style of cottage with vertical board siding. Unique hazards in this area. This is a part of town bisected by the I-5 overpass. Once again, substantial WUI, wildland-urban interface. And the I-5 overpass causes this entire area of town to have a single point of ingress and egress. It's again a recommendation that every neighborhood have a separate ingress and a separate egress so that you could be evacuating while fire trucks are arriving. And Taylor Avenue, I'm not an engineer, so take this with a grain of salt, but I calculated that the right-of-way on Taylor Avenue is approximately 12%. And once again, the maximum allowable grade by safety recommendations is usually 16%. So residents on Taylor Avenue talked about the substantial issues with water flow, landslide, snow, and ice challenges. We had an optional survey area 4 that we did not get to, unfortunately. Here's a map to show the area. Right where it says Lane County, my understanding is that's a location where some above ground water storage is going to be installed. In our reporting, we'll talk about what kinds of challenges might be faced with potential man-made flooding if above ground water storage were to be compromised. And once again, there's a single point of entrance and exit in this roadway. So once this survey has been done, and once the report's in your hand, we want to stress we are the Oregon SHPO. Our specialty is in historic preservation and historic, all aspects of historic preservation. We want to encourage ongoing coordination with the real experts in emergency management, who are OEM, FEMA, and any other disaster preparedness partners like the University of Oregon. Following up a reconnaissance level survey, an intensive level survey can be conducted for properties identified as potentially eligible, which will be the next step in potentially listing them in the National Register of Historic Places. That's a detailed look at individual or group resources. Where possible, we try to get owner permission to include a both interior and exterior evaluation of those buildings. Now, part of the benefit of historic preservation is a wide variety of grants and other funding opportunities, which include certified local government grants. Cottage Grove is a CLG, of course. The Diamonds in the Rough grant is usually for commercial buildings, but there are exceptions, I believe, for historic buildings where the core of the building remains, but the facade has been altered. And special tax assessment for commercial properties in the state of Oregon. I believe, I'm going to skip past questions once again. This is just a short bibliography for some resources from our government partners on specific disaster preparedness topics. Specifically general resilience, wildfire resilience in urban locations, and specific to historic places, rehabilitation and adaptation for flood preparedness for historic places. All right, that brings me close to 15 minutes exactly, which is where I hope to be so that I could then open up the floor for your questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councilor Merryday.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering about the other areas that are more in, are already in a historic district or contain more historic structures. Are they already surveyed for this plan?
That's a great question. And in some ways, yes. The University of Oregon precursor project identified some known historic places in Cottage Grove. We try to survey as many areas, as many parts of our state as possible, including in every community we'd like to know about the whole community if we can, to know what's potentially a historic resource. And so a part of this project identified locations that had not been previously surveyed or had not been surveyed in some time. This was partly about gaining new knowledge. As I was going through inputting the information in our database, I realized that there were some that overlapped a citywide survey done circa 2009. So there was some updating and refreshing information. We try to do that as well. The final reporting will talk a little bit about the entire community, including known and identified historic resources such as the Cottage Grove Museum, Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, 2 historic cemeteries within Cottage Grove. Generally, the focus is a little bit more on here's how your whole community looks from 1,000 feet. What recommendations can we make to prepare based on the fact that we know we have substantial special flood hazard area mixed with substantial wildland urban interface and a lot of rich history. So hopefully that will address your question in some ways. The longer answer is we'd love to come back. We'd love to see more of Cottage Grove. We'd love to continue partnering with you because you are always such a delight to work with, and we know there's more to see. So unfortunately, we obviously can't cover everything in one, but we're looking forward to building on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me with questions. One of the best parts of my job is getting to hear from people across the state. So if you have questions about anything, you can find my info on the website, or please ask a staff member for this PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Items to be added to the agenda, we have none. Appearance of interested citizens. This is the time for citizen comment. The council will first take comments addressing items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. The council will then take comments addressing action items on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, identify whether they are a city resident, and if so, their ward. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of citizen comments. Elaine Burns.
My name is Elaine Burns. I don't think I'll even need the microphone. Okay, I am a city resident. I'm in Ward 1. Excuse me. Thank you for your time. I'm a retired systems engineer and a non-denominational minister. I have been a proud resident of Cottage Grove since 1989. I am not a member of any political party, and I vote my conscience. I am a member of a small and mighty growing group of Cottage Grovians called Friends of Democracy. In the 1990s, a group of people started the Oregon Citizens Alliance. How many of us are old enough to remember that? I drove a big maintenance vehicle for my job, and in my private life, I ministered to drug-addicted alcoholic women, helping them get sober. Members of the OCA living locally concluded I must be a lesbian woman who dated a lot. During the time of those ballot measures, my home was trashed 3 times, windows broken, and graffiti painted on the front door, all because of an assumption. This is a published letter I wrote to the Sentinel 30 years ago. It is as pertinent now as it was then. I have just returned home from the movies, home to my little house on a little street in a little town in the USA. I'm an average citizen. I pay my taxes, keep my home neat and tidy, and help my neighbors when I can. I try to mind my own business, speak my truth with quiet integrity. I think my neighbors are glad I live here. I don't think I bother anyone, and I love where I live. The movie I saw was the Academy Award-winning Schindler's List. I cried during the 3 hours and found myself wishing that all of my wonderful community could watch this film. My heart was heavy on the drive home as I thought of my history lessons from school and the series of events that brought on the Second World War. We all have freedoms. We all have freedoms we take for granted. What if a group of people got together and decided that we couldn't go to the bar on Saturday nights without a permit, a mandatory curfew? What if this group of people decided that sunflowers were no longer allowed in our private gardens? Once it gets started, where does it end? This may not seem to make sense to some. The point is that once we let anyone take away anyone else's living freedoms, who's going to protect ours? My fear is that in the blink of the eye, the nod of the head, and a passing of a statue, I will no longer have the freedom to write this letter, see a movie, or plant sunflowers in my garden. We are moments in time away from the things we fear the most, loss of our personal freedom. One more paragraph. I can make a difference. I can smile at a stranger in the checkout line. I can say my prayers and mind my own business. I can practice the golden rule and treat all other humans like I want to be treated. Can you make a difference too? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kenneth Rowe.
My name is Kenneth Rowe. I live in Ward 1, lived in Cottage Grove for 10 years. I'd like to thank you for my 3 minutes of fame. I introduced myself to Mike, city manager, back in February with the first meeting about expanding the permanent courts of pickleball at Coiner Park and something to do with tennis at the same time. This became, the conversation became conceptual in a broader version of what we want Coiner Park to look like someday. And of course, all of this is budget dependent. We know this. The pickleball players do not come to the city with our handout saying, we want this. When 5 years ago, when Faye and then city manager Richard Myers authorized the redoing of the surface, our group bought the 4 sets of posts and nets at that time. This time around, we were prepared to do more, but we're on a hold because we're trying to look at the bigger picture here. We have 6 pickleball courts and there are 2 tennis courts there. There's no pressing need for more at this time. Mike and I had a walk around the park a few weeks ago, looking at the open space and what's possible with some of the things that he has in his mind. And I commend his vision for Cottage Grove and the city park. And it circled around for me to the most pressing need beyond what a little group of pickleball players, and it's not little, it's 100 players. As far as a budget item that would improve the park for everyone who uses it, and that's the bathroom. A renovation of the current bathroom, a new bathroom from the ground up. Our group stands ready to contribute to this effort because it would serve all park users. It's the only place we have to use that, and it's the women go in pairs. It's unsanitary, and we would also like to be a part of taking care of it when the time comes. We have given, our group has been giving some thought to becoming a public nonprofit so that we might formally be a part of donating to the city for this kind of money. It's all budget item. Looking ahead, I know it sounds like small potatoes, pickleball courts, but the whole park, the park gets use and the people want to see the parks being used. That's about all I have to say. Other than we also would want to be a part of keeping a bathroom clean and policed somehow, volunteer just to make it better for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Good.
My name is Peggy Good. I do not live within the city limits, but I have lived in the Cottage Grove area all my life. I'm speaking to an action item on the agenda tonight, 10A, the city manager's report. I'm here along with Ken Rowe in support of our pickleball community. Our fast-growing pickleball group is very excited to hear of possible future plans to expand our courts. Our vision is to grow to 8 permanent courts that will give us the opportunity to host tournaments, camps, and accommodate more out-of-the-area players. And out-of-town players would help support local businesses as well. We'd like to have 8 permanent courts in our current location and move the 1 to 2 tennis courts to the south end of Coiner Park, where a potential skate park might be added. First, we'd rather not fracture our group, and second is the noise concern. The south end of the park is residential, and the neighbors might raise complaints with the noise. Tennis is a much quieter game and well-suited for that area of the park. Pickleball noise is a growing concern across the nation in residential areas. Currently, neighbors in the Westmoreland area in Eugene have filed a lawsuit with the city of Eugene regarding the noise. A curfew is in place as a temporary solution. Also, Ken and I are currently working with others in our pickleball group to form a nonprofit so we can help the community with financial support to grow Coiner Park into a user-friendly destination. Given that, I support Ken with his proposal of addressing the park's public restrooms first. Park users need working restrooms that are accommodating. I'd like to personally thank Mike Sauerwein for taking time to meet with Ken and myself, doing a walkthrough in the park with the potential layout of the added features, and graciously accepting feedback from our pickleball community. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, before we go into consent agenda, we have an adjustment to the minutes. Ms. Roberts?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out a resident who was actively reading all of the minutes. Notice that on the June 23rd, 2025 City Council meeting minutes on page 10, I only had half a sentence. I must have been tongue-tied. So I gave to each of you tonight page 10 and highlighted as the complete sentence. And so if you choose to approve the consent agenda, it would reflect that change.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mindy. Item 8, resolutions and ordinances. Resolution authorizing support for the 2025-2027 Department of Land Conservation and Development Housing Planning Assistance Grant application. Community Development Manager, Ms. Clemmer.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. The Housing Accountability and Production Office, HAPO, within the Department of Land Conservation and Development, BLCD, provide resources to help Oregon communities prepare and update local land use plans and implement ordinances that respond to identified housing needs, growth management, and resource protection issues. The 2025 to 2027 Housing Planning Assistance Grant Program application was open and has closed on August 4th, 2025. The Lane Council of Governments, LCOG planning staff, has applied for this grant and is in need of a resolution of support. There is one main goal for this grant, and that is to develop, adopt, and implement plans needed to support housing production, affordability, and choice, including housing capacity analyses, HCA, and housing production strategies, HPS, under statewide planning goal 10, housing. The city of Cottage Grove is listed on the housing capacity analysis and housing production strategy schedule per OAR 660-008-045 attachment A. with an HCA originally scheduled for completion by 2027 and an HPS by 2028. If LCOG is awarded this grant, city staff will support the project through tasks such as data gathering, deliverable review, and participation in the project.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts, resolution number?
Resolution number 2172.
I'd entertain a motion. Counselor Wilson.
Yes, I move that the city council approve resolution 2172, establishing support for a 2025-2027 Department of Land Conservation and Development Housing Planning Assistant Grant application.
We have a motion.
I second.
We have a motion with the second. Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Merida,
Aye.
Counselor Settlemeyer,
Aye.
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. All right. Item 9, business from the city council. Anyone want to speak about concerns? Counselor Merida.
This is not a concern, but rather an opportunity. On Friday, I delivered at your place some materials. I would like to ask our council members for your support in directing the city staff to consider the procedure to declare part of Daryl Burleson's Cottage Grove's own Olympian. Part of his training route is designated as the Daryl Burleson Trail. He would run from his home on Highway 99 along River Road and on to the high school and the track as part of his training program. It's already a popular pedestrian route for walkers, runners, dog walkers, and tourists because it has 3 of the stops of the Covered Bridge Tour along this route. There's historical interpretive areas at the Swinging Bridge and at the Centennial Bridge. I would like to, it's already made up of sidewalks, bark trails, and riverside trails. So the infrastructure is mostly in place. This route has been identified as in the adopted bicycle pedestrian plan as an area of future focus. It would include an informational kiosk that would trace Daryl Burleson's career over as a standout of Cottage Grove High School, University of Oregon, and on to the Olympics. It would encourage track tourism, much like the pre-trail in Eugene. It would have little or no cost to the city, and it would be an inspiration to local youth as we consider we have our own state champion, Carter Bingston, currently holding the title. And track has always been an important part of Cottage Grove's school culture.
So we just need a consensus on this, and I am definitely in support of honoring this gentleman.
And I was able to speak to him. He's 85, but he says, I'm not going to be here much longer. So
I think this is wonderful. Thank you. Any others? Counselor Settlemeyer.
I had the opportunity to run into some people who are trying to break a world record talking about records and things here in Cottage Grove. And I know that it's been mentioned around in different places, but mentioning it again, September 13th, sign up, come and pan gold on Main Street in Cottage Grove. The coordination is happening through a sign up through the Chamber of Commerce. So get on that. And if you're willing to help, there's a little place for that too. Some good planning is being done, and it should be something interesting.
And I believe we need 300 people to break the record, correct?
300. So they're shooting for 400. So if you, I don't know, pull a muscle or something, you gotta pan for 30 minutes. So we'll let the week go ahead and take breaks if they need to.
Anyone else? Counselor Wilson.
Yes, had an opportunity to meet with the school board and discuss the possibility of restarting some student activity with the council in student advisory type of capacity, which has happened in the past. I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Sauerwein about that, and with the new superintendent, Todd Miller, as well as all of the school board, and got a very enthusiastic response for that. I had an hour-long discussion with the previous student member of that type of activity, youth advisory council. Yeah, YAC would be a good way to remember that. And she informed me over this hour-long conversation that I had how important it was in her life, and she asked specifically if we were still doing it. And so I encouraged her by saying that I would be looking into that as a possibility, and I know that Mr. Sauerwein is looking into it as well through a cooperation with the school board.
Was it Cassidy you talked to?
No,
Oh,
it
okay.
was Courtney Stewart, Bay Stewart's daughter-in-law.
All right, anyone else? Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, members of council, real quick, where are we at with finding a new finance director and HR director?
Oh, good evening, Your Honor, and members of the City Council. I plan to include that in my presentation later this evening. As far as the finance director is concerned, we are currently advertising for a finance director. That recruitment closes on September 1st. I've reached out to and spoken to a couple of potential candidates. We're obviously advertising it in the kind of places where finance directors would look for jobs. But this is a very specialized position. So we're definitely using all of staff's resources to try to locate and encourage good candidates to apply. As far as the human resource director position is concerned, we are contracting with LCOG, Lane Council of Governments, for a consultant to act essentially as our acting human resources director. This would be I like to call it bridge technology, similar to what we did with Eric for the finance director position.
And then also with our 12th Street Safe Sleep site. I know there's less than a handful of people that utilize the site, and the fenced in area is considerably larger than what is needed realistically. I'd like to see about maybe reducing the size of that and then figuring out what we can do in the way of the loitering that happens in the area in front of the site during the day. I've noticed there's an absorbent amount of trash that collects in front on the sidewalks in the neighboring parking lot in front of the Safe Sleep site. So I don't know if there's anything we can do in the way of addressing that loitering that happens out front, because as far as I know, it is city property in the gravel area there. And then would the nuisance ordinance that we're looking at considering address issues with the loitering in the adjacent business parking lots during the day? Because I can't remember the name of the business that's adjacent to the Dairy Mart.
Dentist's office.
Is that a dentist office?
Orthodontist.
Okay.
Orthodontist.
But there's always people camped out in the backside of that. So I don't know if that ordinance would maybe address some of that or help alleviate some of that. But there's been a lot of complaints from residents in the area about the ongoings during the day and during the night, still very noisy and loud. So I'd like to see how we can try to address that.
Well, good evening again, Your Honor, and members of the council. Chief and I had actually planned to talk about that this evening under the city manager's report. Earlier today, we actually met with one of the neighbors of the Dusk to Dawn homeless site. And, you know, the chief's got a significant amount of information that he can provide to you later this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Moving on to the report from the city manager. Now you can talk about it.
Well, good evening again, Your Honor, and members of the council. You know, since we didn't meet because of the symphony last month, I've got a number of small items to run through with you. But first off, as I said, I was just going to ask the chief to talk about what's been going on with the Dusk to Dawn camp.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yeah, I'll try to address some or all of what Councilor Lammerman had brought up. The first one is loitering on city property, and that it's not illegal. So city property is open to members of the public. So the same as our parks and our other properties. So the issues that we look to address are the things that are criminal in nature, the behavior that goes along with the activities there on that property, and also the property around town. But just as an example, I pulled up some numbers today in preparation for a meeting that we had earlier this afternoon. And I just wanted to kind of do a look back over the previous 90 days because I know that our officers are extremely busy there at that site at 12th Street. And I know that they're following through, that they are contacting people and they are holding people accountable for their behavior if it is criminal in nature. But just some numbers that I was able to pull. Our officers, we had, and these are just the numbers that are tracked in our CAD system. And keep in mind, this only is pertaining to law enforcement activity out there and not the work of other city staff that goes on out there as well. But our police officers have documented 143 calls for service at the 12th Street camp over the last 90 days. A lot of those are proactive patrols. We categorize those as patrol checks. There's also criminal cases in here where they've arrested people, issued them citations for various things such as illegal camping, theft. Sometimes there's warrant arrests, wanted subjects, et cetera. So as far as, you know, what more we're doing out there, you know, our officers are following the law, following what ordinances we have in place, and they're spending a significant amount of time out there holding folks accountable. So one of the things that we are working on right now, there's a project to upgrade some of the CCTV around the city. You know, we've been working, Faye and I have been working with ValleyTel on putting in some cameras. So there is going to be a camera installed out there. That'll give us an opportunity to not only have our dispatch have a live look at what's going on out there, but also the chance for us to go back, hopefully deal with some of the illegal dumping that's going on out there. That seems to be one of our biggest issues. But, you know, I mean, I can assure you that it doesn't take long for stuff to accumulate. When it does, our officers, our public works staff are addressing it and clearing it and cleaning it up as quickly as possible. But it is a reoccurring issue out there. And it is a challenge on the law enforcement side for us to actually determine who did the dumping or who the property belonged to or how it got there. Short of us, standing a post out there 24/7, which is never going to happen. It's extremely hard for us in some of those cases to try to identify who's actually doing the dumping out there. So adding the camera out there, we're hoping will help us address some of those issues and potentially put a stop to it. But I will just say that we are spending a lot of time out there, a lot of resources, and that the numbers that I gave you are just what's being tracked in our dispatch system, and that doesn't include an additional 27 calls that were coded for Trailhead Park for similar stuff. So we're looking at almost 170 plus calls over a 90-day period where officers are out there, and sometimes it's multiple times in a day. And just for example, if I'm looking right here at May 3rd, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instances that were captured in CAD just on the 3rd. So 5 times in one day that our officers were out there. And those are anything from routine patrol checks, dog at large, theft, and a wanted subject. So we're addressing it. We're following the rules. We're following the law, and we're doing things responsibly and ethically when it comes to being fair and consistent in how we enforce the rules, the ordinances, and the laws around town.
So Lammerman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Chief, I was curious, since the Lane County Mobile Crisis Unit came down, do we have any numbers, or are we able to get any numbers of how many times they've had to go over there to the 12th Street site?
They're keeping data as well. So they're being dispatched through the Lane County Sheriff's Office, but I can certainly reach out to the supervisor and get their data as far as what they're doing in the area. I know that they've their calls and their responses down here to South Lane County continue to increase. So as their staffing improves and they get staffed up, they're able to spend more time down here. But yeah, specifically with, inside the city limits of Cottage Grove, and then, and around, the outlying areas as well. So they're not just here in town when they're south, but yeah, I can reach out to the supervisor if that's something you want. I can try to get some data on that and bring that back to the next meeting. If you all would like to have some of that information, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, I'd love to see how much activity they're kind of having in Cottage Grove proper and the immediate surrounding area, that we can kind of get a better idea of our mental health situation in town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Counselor Settlemyer.
Thank you. That sounds like a lot of police energy. Are there any other places that have anywhere near that kind of energy from the police department within city limits, for like comparison?
Mayor, Counselor Settlemyer, I don't know because I haven't pulled the data, but I would venture to guess that no, there's not any other place that we're going to 143 times in a 90-day period. So I could go back and pull data, but the way I pull this information is by looking at a specific address. So we put that address into the computer system, and it pulls up what we call a premise history, and it gives us that information. So but again, a lot of this stuff is proactive patrols over there as well. So it's not just calls for service. It's not just responding. It's being proactive and our officers driving through there. And this doesn't capture all of it. And I'm probably not as great at this because I'm not out there on the street as much as our patrol officers are. But every time I leave the office to go do something around town or to do just a routine patrol, that's always part of one of the areas that I go to. So this doesn't capture the stuff that I'm doing. And I'm actually going to try to do a better job of calling all of those out on the radio too. So that time is captured as well. So.
Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I just thought I would add a little bit, Councilor Lammerman. The City Public Works crew generally opens the site up on Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. and then close it at 8 a.m. in the morning. In generally, opening is pretty simple. Just unlock the leave. But generally in the mornings, it can be anywhere from a 30-minute to an hour plus of their time trying to encourage the individuals to wake up and move on. And then depending on if they're able to take all their belongings with them when they go, whatever's left, and our crew tends to pick up. And that will generally be somewhere, at least once a week or more, a small 5-yard dump truck that we fill up that generally finds its way up to Short Mountain. So there is quite a bit of presence at Public Works. It's also during the Saturday and Sunday, the police department takes that role, and occasionally they'll call in our on-call Public Works folks to clean up maybe an extraordinary amount of garbage or something that's accumulated. So, there is quite a bit of Public Works presence too.
Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. Mr. Sauerwein?
Good evening again, Your Honor. I'm going to pass this around while I'm going through a couple of quick items here. First of all, the League of Oregon Cities conference is the first weekend in October 2nd through 4th. If you are interested in attending, please talk to our city recorder and she will get you registered for the event. Also would note that Eisler CPA is in the process of completing the 2022-2023 audit. We've scheduled an audit committee meeting for September 18th, and then the city council presentation will be at your September 22nd meeting. And also just looking ahead a little bit, the city attorney at the August 25th meeting will be presenting hopefully the final version of the ordinance on chronic nuisances and also a resolution repealing ordinance 2863, which is the economic improvement district and the business improvement district. So what I passed out to you is a couple of aerial maps, and I want to thank Faye for putting these together for me, of Coiner Park. Now, I've had conversations with individual council members and with a couple of groups of council members about potentially things that we could do in Coiner Park. To just start out with the first map there, if you look at it, it's labeled 2025 Coiner Park. I want you to be able to see the park as a whole in the center there. You can see where the tennis courts and the pickleball courts are over to the right, and you can see the park itself a little to the left of that. But also take a look at the houses around it. Where Main Street up at the top is and where Adams is down at the bottom, and just kind of really familiarize, the fact that this park does have a lot of housing around it. There's some possible redevelopment, and let me stress from the beginning, there is no money budgeted for any of this redevelopment. This is the beginning of a conversation. Nobody's being asked to make any decisions. But this is something I want you to be able to take a look at and be able to take these maps out to the park yourself and kind of do a walk around. Now, we've identified an area to what I call the bottom of the park down by Adams Street that is about 18,000 square feet. We talked about doing a skateboard park that would be approximately 10,000 square feet. So you can see that it would take up a little more than half of that space. And as you heard this evening, we're also talking about, what if we were to be able to do additional tennis courts or other activities down here in this lower part. And again, I want you to be able to, when you go out there, see where houses are located. Also think about how much of that area is being used for something like Bohemia Mining Days, or the emergency prep event. And think about how it might impact the neighborhood if we were to do additional lighting. There's lights down there right now, but if we were to do additional lighting. So this is something you really kind of need to go experience by yourself, out in the park itself. So the next picture, this is another potential redevelopment area. This is just south of the pickleball courts and the tennis courts. Some of the council members, along with city staff, were involved in recently doing some tree planting out in this particular piece of property. And what we've talked about here is potentially having a picnic area or an additional restroom. As we know, there's one restroom and it's over on the other side of the park. But there's a possibility that this could be an area where we could build an additional restroom. And again, that's not something that's currently budgeted. We'd be looking for grant funds. We'd be looking for participation potentially from different groups within the community. And then the final sheet shows where we could put additional pickleball courts. Again, this is it. This is Main Street. We have the 2 tennis courts. We have the 4 pickleball courts. And potentially we could put 4 more pickleball courts there for a total of 8. Which would allow us to, as you heard earlier from some of the public comment, hold tournaments, which would bring folks into the community, and hopefully they'd spend some money and leave their money behind when they came to tournaments and things here. So again, as I said, this is just the beginning of a conversation. This is the first step in it. I'd also note that there's a couple of council members who aren't here this evening, both of which have expressed a strong interest in being a part of this discussion. So when I get the opportunity, I'll be providing them with copies of these as well. But with that, I'll be happy to take any questions or comments anybody might have.
Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. First off, I would not be in favor of anything that hindered at the moment Bohemia Mining Days, because we all know they use Coinier Park. The other 2 options don't seem too bad on the redevelopment area number 2 and the pickleball expansion inside that area there. But yeah, the other option of the redevelopment on the southeast corner of Coinier, if it didn't hurt Bohemia Mining Days being able to be in that park and operating in that park, I would be in favor of it. But outside of that, it'd be a no-go unless we want to move them back downtown like they used to be historically.
Counselor Merida.
I just wanted to point out that during Bohemia Mining Days, the southern half of that area was not utilized. This year.
I was gonna say, normally they have their weird springy trampoline thing back there and a bunch of other stuff, but
I would like to say that I do support the pickleball group, and I want to start this conversation and hopefully get to a place that everyone will be happy with. And I have to say, I love that you are not just coming here and throwing it on the city and saying, do it, that you guys are taking an active role in that and know that, you know, how tight our budget is, and really appreciate that. It means a lot. Counselor Wilson.
I'll just throw my 2 cents in there. I do support the idea of either additional restrooms facilities or improved restroom facilities, and having them near to the courts where there is a lot of activity is a really good idea. The proposed, expansion of the pickleball court area, that would be very unimpactful to the community as far as the noise situation. I'm familiar with what happened in Eugene at the Westmoreland situation that's up near an area where I played a lot of tennis on that court when I was growing up, and tennis is a quieter sport than pickleball, just in general speaking. And yes, there is quite a bit of neighborhood complaints about it is surrounded by residents. So having it in that area where there is much less impact for residents would be a better proposal. And I have to echo Councilman Lammerman's concerns about Bohemia Mining Days. I'm not in favor of impacting that in any way, shape, or form. It's just regaining momentum, and it's got a really good group working on and continuing to expand its impact in our community, and I'd hate to see anything get in the way of that.
And also one more comment. I appreciate you saying that you'd help man the restrooms because this has been a battle that we've had for a very long time. There's not a lot of citizen watchdog out there. And I think that's what we need to start doing as a community so that we can still have our bathrooms in use. Counselor Lammerman.
Still in the restrooms, but slightly different question. Why is there not as much vandalism at the restrooms at Bohemia Park compared to Coynier Park?
Director Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Lammerman. I've been waiting to interject and try to address some of the comments. So maintaining the bathrooms in this city is very good. Coynier Park is probably the one that's the most challenging. As Police Chief Chase said, we're working on trying to get some security camera systems up, and Coynier Park is going to be one that'll have a camera installed hopefully this week that'll be able to look at the bathrooms. It's very frustrating. We've tried game cameras, we've tried police presence. There's just a lot of activity there. There's nothing more frustrating than your crew going in and installing 2 new brand new doors at the cost of $10,000, and a week later somebody took a crowbar to it. Has nothing to do with people that want to use the bathrooms that will treat it properly. We also found that we're working with Councilor Meriday on some paint that is graffiti proof to see if that'll work, because we're in there painting almost weekly the graffiti. Those specific bathrooms are a challenge. To Bohemia Park, what we found at Bohemia Park is that we lock them every night and reopen them in the morning. They're cleaned in the evenings. So that helps determine if there's anything that needs to be addressed. The older bathrooms at Bohemia Park are probably the ones that were they needed to be a little bit more bulletproof. The new bathrooms that we built for the splash pad are similar to what you would see in a new rest area stop. They're not bulletproof, but they're in pretty good shape that they'll take a lot of the beating. And once again, that's something that we lock on a regular basis. At Bohemia Park, we are installing new security camera systems, and we will also have access control. So those bathrooms, I will no longer have to come in every evening at 9 o'clock to lock the new bathrooms, because we should have an automatic locking system with a motion sensor inside the bathroom, unless somebody is locked themselves in the bathrooms. So we're trying really hard to learn and try to improve. Hopefully we can get the security camera over there at Coynier Park, be able to determine what kind of activities taking place, and be able to pinpoint it. The new camera systems that we're using are much better than back in the days. We're able to actually identify people, get license plate numbers and stuff. So cautiously optimistic that we'll be moving in that direction to be able to deter some of this vandalism that's taking place. Better job on keeping them clean and usable.
Counselor Settlemyer.
I appreciate the idea of Bohemia Mining Days takes up space, but if you take a look at the last 2 pages here, the last one, we're talking about the pickleball courts that are over, if they can just be set beside the existing pickleball courts. And you talk about housing and who's going to be bothered by that noise. It's pretty much no problem in there, other than maybe people driving by on Main Street. And if you take a look at the second to the last page, the idea of there's an area, I know parking is important during Bohemia Mining Days, but that part isn't used. There's some picnic tables back there during Bohemia Mining Days, but that's been historically parking. And I know that parking is a challenge and it's a wonderful resource. Maybe we can think of some kind of shuttle service or something for a weekend and a couple of days a year and get people over to Bohemia Mining Days, in some kind of goofy horse-drawn cart or something, and be able to use that kind of space for what could be used in the southeast area. Use the picnic area that it shows on the second place here for expanding Bohemia Mining Days, and go ahead and use the southeast area for the skate park. And that, if you'll notice, we're freeing up 14,000 square feet for the new picnic area that will try and make nicer. So Bohemia Mining Days it'll just have a presence on the other side of where everybody sets up the food area there. And the southeast corner, I think we would get more young kids pretty excited about coming to Bohemia Mining Days if there was a new skate park there too, and hold some things there related to that interest.
Councilor Merida.
It's unfortunate that Councilor Irvin is not here because we have spent several years working together about bringing improved skating facilities to the youth here in Cottage Grove. And one of the concepts that we've been batting about is that having a covered area. And so if we did have a covered area, there are skate features that are movable. So you could move them completely out or away from up against the wall and use the space for something else. It could be a multi-purpose covered facility in Coiner Park. When you're using it as a skate park, you can line up the features, and it also gives variety to the park. After you've ridden a fixed park so many times, it loses its allure. If you have movable features, you can constantly arrange the flow. So Councilor Irvin and I have been looking in that as a direction. So that would be an actual kind of benefit for any activity held in Coiner Park, to have a covered facility that could be versatile and adaptable to a multitude of different activities.
Well, the good news is this is just preliminary discussion and everyone will have a seat at this table. So we'll come back around to it. Councilor Lamberman.
Madam Mayor, Council, I'd like to see about maybe relocating the Safe Sleep site and putting the skate park in its place. Because it's still right off Main Street. It's got access to the trail, plenty of parking.
Well, I think that's a broader discussion that we need to have. I would just note that the staff has definitely looked at other potential locations for the Dusk to Dawn Park, in a park, but this appears to be the best solution that we currently have. And again, the chief and I were meeting just this afternoon with the neighbors of the Dusk to Dawn Park, and we'll continue to work with them.
All right, so we will bring this back up and revisit it and get all those ideas out there. All right, I'm gonna move on. My glasses. So we don't have a city attorney tonight. There are no items removed from the consent agenda. So now we are going to go into an executive session. The City Council for Cottage Grove will now meet in executive session held pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. Council will now recess in this room and ask the public to step out until the end of the executive session. The public then may return to the city council chambers to reconvene the regular council meeting, followed by adjournment. I will now recess this meeting. We're going to stay here. It's short. Do you want the chief leave? Thank you. All right.
Findings are budget for the city. Grass happens, this hour. Have to see them. That's where the budget is. This is a fall, so it's officially decided on.
All right. We will now reconvene city council meeting at 8:27. Is there anything else? All right, meeting is adjourned. Get out. Especially with an executive session. Right, it's all their fault.